My name is Meredith Wallace, I'm 27, and I thought I had everything figured out. A marketing executive with a corner office and a brother I adored. Standing in my childhood home, garment bag containing my bridesmaid dress draped over my arm, I smiled at Aunt Judith. "I can't wait for the ceremony tomorrow," I gushed. She gave me a strange look, then said words that shattered my world. "It was last week." She showed me family wedding photos. Everyone there. Everyone but me. Caleb, my brother, mom, and dad all laughed. "Didn't we tell you?" Before I continue with this heartbreaking story, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below. If this has ever happened to you or someone you know, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more personal stories that might help you navigate your own family challenges. Now, let's dive deeper into how this shocking moment came to be. Growing up as Meredith Wallace meant living in the shadow of my golden child brother, Caleb. 3 years my senior, he excelled at everything from academics to athletics, while I struggled to find my place in our family dynamic. It wasn't that I wasn't successful. I graduated with honors and secured an impressive position at Anderson Marketing by 25. But somehow, my achievements always seemed to pale in comparison to his. Our family home in Connecticut housed countless memories of subtle exclusion. My parents, Patricia and Raymond Wallace, never missed Caleb's baseball games, but my debate team finals often found me scanning empty bleachers where they should have been. "Traffic was terrible," they'd explain, or "your father had an important client meeting." I learned to nod and pretend it didn't hurt. Despite this imbalance, Caleb and I maintained a close relationship. He seemed oblivious to our parents' favoritism, and I never blamed him for it. When we were younger, he'd sneak into my room after particularly difficult family dinners where my accomplishments were glossed over, bringing ice cream and terrible jokes to cheer me up. "Mom and Dad are just weird sometimes," he'd say, never quite acknowledging the pattern but offering comfort nonetheless. Aunt Judith, my mother's sister, reinforced the family dynamic. "Your brother just has that special something," she'd tell me when I was 13, after winning a writing competition that no one attended. "But you're doing fine too." Her backhanded compliments became so familiar that I stopped noticing them. The wedding plans began 6 months ago when Caleb proposed to Vanessa Chen, his college sweetheart. I was genuinely happy for them and immediately thrown into the whirlwind of preparations. Vanessa and I spent countless hours discussing flower arrangements, venue options, and catering menus. "I'm so glad Caleb has a sister who cares this much," she told me once, squeezing my hand across a table cluttered with color swatches. 3 months before the wedding, I purchased an expensive emerald green bridesmaid dress that Vanessa had selected. It cost nearly 2 weeks' salary, but I didn't hesitate. This was for Caleb. I even took it to be professionally altered, ensuring it would be perfect for his special day. In quiet evenings alone, I crafted my maid of honor speech, wanting every word to convey how proud I was of the man my brother had become. I practiced it in front of my bathroom mirror, timing myself, editing and refining until tears came to my eyes at the perfect ending. I requested vacation time specifically for the wedding week, planning to help with last-minute details and spend quality time with extended family visiting from across the country. My boss Diane was understanding, knowing how important this was to me. Throughout my childhood and adult life, I had learned to accept being forgotten on occasion. My 16th birthday party, which my parents had promised would be special, was downgraded to pizza at home because Caleb had an unexpected college interview. My college graduation dinner was cut short when my father received a call about Caleb's job offer. Each time, I swallowed my disappointment and told myself it wasn't intentional. There was one notable exception to this pattern. When I was 22 and a cousin made a cutting remark about me being the other Wallace, Caleb stepped in. "My sister is brilliant and kind," he said firmly, "and you'd be lucky to be half the person she is." That moment sustained me through countless subsequent letdowns, a proof that my brother saw me even when others didn't. Despite years of therapy in my early 20s, I continued making excuses for my family's behavior. "They're just distracted," I'd tell Dr. Bennett, my first therapist. "They don't mean to forget me." I became expert at forgiving without receiving apologies, at lowering my expectations to avoid disappointment. In the week leading up to the wedding, I confirmed the details multiple times. Text messages to Caleb and Vanessa about arrival times, email exchanges about the rehearsal dinner, even a call with my mother about which shoes would match the bridesmaid dress best. Every conversation reinforced what I already knew. The wedding was scheduled for Saturday, June 15th. I packed my car the night before, including a framed photo of Caleb and Mia's children to give as a personal gift. My heart was full of genuine excitement for my brother and anticipation for being part of his special day. For once, I would be included in an important family moment. I was sure of it. The silence in the living room after Aunt Judith's announcement was deafening. I stared at the wedding photos she'd pulled up on her iPad, my mind refusing to process what I was seeing. There was my brother in his tuxedo, beaming. My parents, elegantly dressed. Cousins, uncles, family friends. Everyone except me. This is a joke, right? I asked, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. Some kind of weird prank before the actual wedding tomorrow? My mother, Patricia, approached with a sympathetic expression that didn't reach her eyes. Oh, Meredith, the date changed last minute. Vanessa's grandmother could only come last weekend. I was sure we told you. You never check your messages, my father added from his armchair, not even looking up from his newspaper. We all tried to reach you. Caleb at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. He ran his hand through his hair, a nervous habit from childhood. Things got crazy with the venue change. I must have forgotten to tell you specifically. I'm really sorry, Mayor. My hands trembled as I pulled the invitation from my purse, the elegant script clearly stating June 15th. Today was June 14th. This says tomorrow, I said, showing it to them. And I have texts from both you and Vanessa from last week discussing pickup times for tomorrow. I opened my phone, scrolling through messages. Nothing about a date change. The wedding website, which I pulled up with shaking fingers, still showed the original date. The evidence was irrefutable. Well, these things happen, Aunt Judith said dismissively. Remember when you missed your cousin Theo's graduation because you got the time wrong? I didn't get anything wrong, I insisted, my voice rising. No one told me about any change. My mother sighed dramatically. You're being so dramatic as usual, Meredith. It was a beautiful ceremony. Vanessa's family put together a lovely video. You can watch it later. But it was Caleb's betrayal that cut deepest. My brother, who I thought would always have my back, who I had supported through breakups and job losses and every important moment of his adult life, had married without me there. Had he even noticed my absence? Had anyone? Wait, I said suddenly, noticing something in one of the photos. Is that my bridesmaid dress? The one I bought and had altered. My mother and Aunt Judith exchanged glances. Well, it seemed a shame to waste it. My mother said carefully. Allison is your size, and since you weren't there, the realization that they had given my dress to our cousin Allison, that they had simply replaced me, broke something inside me. The tears I'd been fighting spilled over. How could you do this? I asked Caleb directly, ignoring the others. How could you not make sure I knew? I'm your sister. He looked genuinely remorseful, but his words failed him. I really thought you knew. With everything happening. Oh, find a sense of humor about it. My father interjected. These things happen in families. Not in normal families, I shouted, surprising even myself with the volume. Normal families don't exclude a member from a major life event and then laugh about it. I grabbed my purse and the garment bag containing nothing now, backing toward the door. My entire body felt cold, numb. Meredith, don't be ridiculous, my mother called. You're already here. Stay the weekend as planned. But I couldn't breathe in that house for another minute. I turned and ran to my car, fumbling with the keys as tears blurred my vision. Once inside, I called Natasha, my best friend since college. They did what? She exclaimed after I managed to explain between sobs. That's not a mistake, Mare. That's emotional abuse. Come straight to my place. Don't stay with them another minute. Through the fog of betrayal, her words penetrated. Abuse. Had it really gone that far? As I drove away from my childhood home, the patterns of a lifetime suddenly appeared with devastating clarity. Natasha's apartment became my refuge that night. She listened without interruption as I poured out not just the wedding story, but all the years of subtle exclusion that preceded it. When I finally fell silent, emotionally exhausted, she handed me a glass of wine and said words I'd needed to hear for years. Meredith, what they did is not normal or acceptable. It's not something loving families do. The next morning, I called my office and extended my vacation time, explaining vaguely that there had been a family emergency. The thought of returning to my empty apartment in the city felt unbearable, so Natasha insisted I stay with her for a few days. When I finally did return home, the silence was suffocating. My boyfriend Elliot came over immediately when I called, listening in shocked disbelief to my account. "I knew your family was complicated," he said carefully, "but this crosses every line. You deserve better, Mare." In the days that followed, I found myself obsessively reviewing photos and memories of my relationship with Caleb. Had I misinterpreted our closeness all these years? Had he merely tolerated me while secretly sharing our parents' dismissive attitude? My spiral deepened when, scrolling through social media, I discovered evidence of other family events I hadn't known about. A cousin's baby shower 3 months ago. A dinner celebrating my father's promotion last winter. Small gatherings and celebrations where my absence wasn't even noteworthy. Work became an impossible challenge. I stared at marketing proposals without comprehension, missed deadlines, and found myself hiding in bathroom stalls to cry. After 2 weeks of this, my supervisor Diane called me into her office. "Whatever is happening in your personal life is clearly serious," she said with genuine concern. "Take some time, or consider talking to someone. The company has resources." This gentle suggestion led me to Dr. Monica Reed, a therapist specializing in family trauma. Our first session was revelatory. "What you're describing is a classic scapegoat dynamic," she explained after listening to my history. "Families often unconsciously designate one member to carry blame and negative projections, while elevating another to golden child status." "But why me?" I asked, the question that had haunted me for years. "It's never about the scapegoat's actual qualities or behavior," she said gently. "It's about what the family system needs to maintain its equilibrium." Meanwhile, my phone filled with messages from family members. My mother's text shifted from irritation to performative concern. "We're worried about you," she wrote, never acknowledging what had triggered my withdrawal. Caleb's messages were brief and superficial. "Hope you're okay and call when you can." The worst was seeing wedding photos appear on social media with captions about everyone being together and complete family joy. I existed in a bizarre parallel reality where my absence wasn't even acknowledged. Sleep became elusive. Food lost its taste. I moved through days mechanically, my mind constantly replaying the moment of discovery in my parents' living room. Elliot and Natasha took turns checking on me, their concern growing as I continued to deteriorate. "I think you need to consider taking a complete break from your family," Dr. Reed suggested in our 4th session. "Not forever, but long enough to regain your equilibrium and establish healthier boundaries." The idea was simultaneously terrifying and liberating. My entire life had been structured around seeking my family's approval and inclusion. What would I be without that driving force? With Dr. Reed's guidance, I crafted an auto-response email for my family members. "I need some time to process recent events. I'll reach out when I'm ready to talk." I recorded a similar voicemail message. Then I muted all their notifications. For the first time in my life, I was prioritizing my own emotional health over my desperate need for family validation. It felt like stepping off a cliff, terrifying but necessary. The days that followed were difficult but cleansing. I focused on basic self-care that had fallen away, eating regular meals, taking walks in the park near my apartment, allowing myself to feel anger without self-recrimination. Dr. Reed helped me recognize that my pain was proportionate to the hurt inflicted, not an overreaction as my family had always suggested. Your feelings are valid information, she reminded me. They're telling you something important about how you're being treated. I began keeping a journal, documenting not just current feelings, but past incidents I'd previously minimized. The pattern became impossible to ignore, a lifetime of being treated as an afterthought, of having my needs and feelings dismissed as inconvenient or excessive. Natasha and Elliot remained steadfast supports, never pushing me to reconcile before I was ready. Family is supposed to build you up, not tear you down, Natasha said during a movie night at her place. Sometimes the family you choose is more important than the family you're born into. This idea of chosen family took root in my mind, offering an alternative to the painful dynamic I'd always accepted as inevitable. Perhaps I deserved better than being forgotten on my brother's wedding day. Perhaps I always had. Exactly 1 month after the wedding incident, my phone rang with my parents' number. Having just come from a productive therapy session, I felt strong enough to answer. Meredith, finally, my mother said, as if my silence had been a minor inconvenience. We've been trying to reach you about the renovations. What renovations? I asked, confused by this unexpected topic. For your old bedroom. We're converting it into a home office for your father. The contractor needs to know if you want any of the remaining things in your closet, or if we should just donate everything. The casual cruelty of this conversation stunned me. After excluding me from my brother's wedding, they were now erasing my physical space in the family home, without acknowledgement of the pain they had caused. Are you serious right now? I asked, my voice eerily calm. After what happened with Caleb's wedding, you're calling about renovating my room? Oh, Meredith, my mother sighed. Are you still upset about that misunderstanding? It was weeks ago. Something inside me broke free. The dam of politeness and accommodation that had contained my true feelings for 27 years collapsed completely. It wasn't a misunderstanding, I said, my voice gaining strength. It was the culmination of a lifetime of being treated as less important, less worthy of consideration than everyone else in this family. That's ridiculous, my father interjected, apparently on speakerphone. We've always treated you and your brother exactly the same. Really? Where were you when I graduated with honors? Working. Where were you for my first art exhibition? At Caleb's baseball game. Who forgot my 21st birthday, but threw Caleb a surprise party for his? You did. The silence on the other end was satisfying. And now you've literally removed me from the most important day in my brother's life, and you have the audacity to call about renovating my childhood bedroom as if nothing happened? We told you the date changed, my mother said defensively. It's not our fault if you don't check your messages. Show me, I challenged. Show me a single text, email, or voicemail where anyone told me the wedding date changed. Because I've checked repeatedly, and it doesn't exist. More silence, then my father's irritated voice. We don't have to prove anything to you. This victim complex of yours is getting old, Meredith. Their inability to take even a fraction of responsibility solidified my resolve. I'm done, I said simply. I'm done being the family's scapegoat. I'm done making excuses for inexcusable behavior. I'm done pretending that the way you treat me is normal or acceptable. Don't be so dramatic, Aunt Judith's voice suddenly interjected. Of course she was there too. I'll be sending an email, I continued, ignoring her. It will explain exactly where I stand and what needs to change if we're to have any relationship moving forward. Until then, do whatever you want with my room. It stopped being my safe space long ago anyway. I ended the call before they could respond, my hands shaking but my mind surprisingly clear. Within the hour, I had drafted a comprehensive email to my entire family, including Caleb. I documented the pattern of exclusion with specific incidents dating back to childhood. I explained how the wedding was not an isolated incident, but the breaking point in a long history of being treated as dispensable. I set clear terms for any future relationship, acknowledgement of the pattern, genuine apology, and demonstrable change in behavior going forward. I will always love you as my family, I concluded, but I can no longer accept being loved conditionally or inconsistently in return. The choice about our future relationship is now yours to make. Pressing send unleashed a storm of conflicting emotions. Terror at having finally confronted the untouchable family narrative. Liberation at speaking my truth after decades of silence. Doubt about whether I had gone too far demanded too much. The spectrum of feelings was overwhelming. A panic attack seized me an hour later, my chest constricting as I gasped for breath on my bathroom floor. What had I done? How could I survive without my family's approval, conditional though it was? I called Dr. Reed's emergency line, and her calm voice guided me back to stability. "What you're feeling is normal," she assured me. "You've challenged a fundamental family dynamic that has been in place your entire life." That's incredibly brave, and also incredibly scary. Natasha arrived at my apartment that evening with dinner and unwavering support. Elliot called to check in, his quiet pride in my courage a balm to my raw nerves. For the first time, I had prioritized self-protection over family approval, and though the cost was high, something essential had shifted inside me. The physical and emotional toll of the confrontation was significant. I took sick days from work, sleeping long hours as my body processed the accumulated stress. But beneath the exhaustion, a new feeling was taking root: respect for my own boundaries and needs. As I reviewed a lifetime of accepting mistreatment, a profound question emerged. What might my life become if I stopped organizing it around gaining the approval of people who seemed constitutionally incapable of giving it? The weeks following my confrontation with my family became a period of intensive self-discovery. With Dr. Reed's guidance, I began dismantling the belief systems that had kept me trapped in unhealthy dynamics for so long. "Your value isn't determined by your family's ability to recognize it," she reminded me during a particularly difficult session. "It exists independently of their perception." This concept was revolutionary. If I wasn't defined by my role as the family's scapegoat, who was I? What did I actually want from life, separate from the desperate desire for family validation? At work, I channeled my emotional energy into creativity. The marketing campaign I'd been struggling with suddenly came into focus, and I presented a revitalized strategy that impressed even the most skeptical executives. Diane noticed the change immediately. "Whatever storm you were weathering, it seems to have cleared," she commented after a particularly successful client meeting. "Not cleared," I corrected her. "I've just learned to sail through it rather than drowning in it." My personal relationships began transforming as well. I found myself accepting lunch invitations from coworkers Zoe and Lauren, women I'd always admired but kept at a distance, fearing rejection. Our conversations quickly deepened beyond work topics, revealing shared experiences and compatible senses of humor. Elliot's steadfast support throughout my family crisis had revealed the depth of his character. One evening, as we cooked dinner together in my apartment, he broached the subject carefully. "I've always sensed you kept parts of yourself hidden," he said, stirring pasta sauce. "It's like you were afraid that if people saw all of you, they'd find you wanting, the way your family did." His perception startled me. "And now," he smiled, "now you're letting your light shine. It's beautiful to witness, Meredith." 3 weeks after sending my email, I took a weekend trip to a coastal retreat, seeking perspective in solitude. Walking along empty beaches, journaling by firelight, I began piecing together a new narrative of my life, one where I wasn't deficient or unworthy, but simply born into a family system incapable of seeing me clearly. My journal entries from this period reveal a mind in transformation. Day 1. Still wondering if I overreacted. What if I'm the problem, like they've always said? But then why does standing up for myself feel so right, so necessary? Asterisk. Day 2. Realize today that I've spent my entire adult life trying to earn love that should have been freely given. What might I have accomplished if that energy had been directed elsewhere? Asterisk. Day 3. Had a dream about Caleb's wedding where I stood up during the ceremony and demanded to be seen. Woke up crying but also feeling powerful. I'm done being invisible. Asterisk. Returning to the city, I threw myself into therapy with renewed commitment. Dr. Reed introduced techniques for recognizing and interrupting negative thought patterns, for setting boundaries without guilt, for distinguishing between healthy and unhealthy relationships. Your family operated on a paradigm of conditional love, she explained. You were valued when convenient, forgotten when not. That's created an internal belief that you must constantly earn love through performance or accommodation. How do I unlearn that? I asked. By practicing its opposite. By choosing relationships where love is consistent and reciprocal, where your worth isn't contingent on utility or compliance. This insight guided my decisions about which relationships to nurture. Zoe and Lauren became close friends, offering the female solidarity I'd always craved but never found with female relatives. Elliot and I deepened our connection, having conversations about future possibilities that I'd always been too insecure to entertain. Professionally, my newfound clarity translated to increased confidence. When the opportunity arose to lead our company's largest campaign for an important new client, I volunteered without the self-doubt that would have previously held me back. To my amazement, I was selected. Your presentation showed the perfect balance of creativity and strategic thinking, Diane told me. The client specifically mentioned your authentic approach. Authentic. The word resonated deeply. I was becoming more authentically myself as I shed the constraints of family expectations and judgments. An unexpected connection during this period came from my cousin Melissa, who reached out after receiving my family-wide email. I've experienced similar treatment, she wrote. Aunt Patricia and Uncle Raymond have always had very rigid ideas about family hierarchy and roles. It isn't just you, and it never was about anything lacking in you. Over coffee, Melissa shared family history I'd never known. How my father's own parents had played favorites among their children. How my mother had been raised with impossible standards by a hypercritical mother, my grandmother. Generational trauma. Dr. Reed nodded when I shared these revelations. Patterns repeat until someone has the courage to break them. That's the work you're doing now, Meredith. As summer turned to fall, I faced my first holiday season potentially separated from blood relatives. The thought was both liberating and terrifying. Natasha solved the dilemma by organizing a chosen family Thanksgiving, including Elliot, Zoe, Lauren, and several other friends who had become important parts of my support system. No dysfunctional family dynamics allowed, she announced, distributing hand-drawn invitations. Just good food and people who genuinely enjoy each other's company. The celebration was everything family gatherings had never been for me. Relaxed, affirming, filled with laughter that didn't come at anyone's expense. We created new traditions, like going around the table to express genuine appreciations for each person present. When my turn came, emotion closed my throat momentarily. I'm grateful to have found people who see me. I finally managed. Really see me. Physical changes accompanied my emotional evolution. The stress-induced insomnia that had plagued me for months subsided. My complexion cleared. The persistent tension in my shoulders released. Even my posture improved, as if my body was physically expressing its liberation from old constraints. I redecorated my apartment, replacing generic furnishings with pieces that genuinely reflected my aesthetic preferences. I took up photography, discovering a talent for capturing urban landscapes at dawn. Small changes, perhaps, but significant in their representation of newfound self-determination. The first test of my boundaries came when my parents' anniversary dinner invitation arrived in early December. In previous years, I would have rearranged any plans to attend, desperate for inclusion. This time, I declined politely but firmly, already committed to a gallery opening featuring Zoe's artwork. The expected guilt never materialized. Instead, I felt peaceful, even proud of prioritizing a genuine friendship over an obligation fraught with painful history. A week before Christmas, a surprising email arrived from Vanessa, my brother's wife. I've only recently understood what happened with the wedding, she wrote. Caleb told me you received the date change notification and I never questioned it. I'm deeply sorry for my part in causing you pain, however unintentional. I value our relationship and hope we might talk when you're ready. Her message, free from the defensiveness and blame-shifting characteristic of my family's communications, brought unexpected tears. Perhaps not all connections were irreparably damaged after all. As the year drew to a close, I found myself envisioning a future based on authentic connections rather than obligatory ones. The pain of family exclusion remained, but it no longer defined me. I was building something new from the ashes of what had been destroyed, something potentially stronger and healthier than I had ever known. 3 months after my confrontational email, an unexpected message appeared from Caleb. Unlike his previous texts, this one acknowledged the elephant in the room. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about what you wrote," it began. "You're right about the patterns in our family. I never saw them clearly because they benefited me. I'd like to talk if you're willing." After consultation with Dr. Reed and careful consideration, I agreed to meet my brother for coffee at a neutral location. I arrived early, setting clear mental boundaries for the conversation. This wasn't about wholesale forgiveness or pretending nothing had happened. It was about seeing if any genuine relationship could be salvaged. Caleb appeared nervous, a surprising change from his usual confidence. "Thank you for coming," he said, sliding into the seat across from me. "I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't," I admitted. "But I've been learning the difference between protecting myself and isolating myself." He nodded, fidgeting with his coffee cup. "I owe you an apology. A real one. Not the half-hearted excuse I gave you that day. The truth is, there was confusion about the wedding date, but not the kind we claimed. Vanessa's grandmother had a scheduling conflict with the original date, and we briefly considered moving it up a week. But you didn't," I stated flatly, remembering the invitation still in my possession. "No, we worked it out without changing the date." But Mom and Aunt Judith had already started telling some family members about the potential change. When the date stayed the same, Mom claimed she couldn't reach you about the change back to the original date. I sat in stunned silence as he continued. "I knew something was wrong when Vanessa kept asking where you were during the wedding preparations. She was shocked when Mom said you'd been informed, but chose not to come. I should have questioned it then, but everything was so hectic." "That's not an excuse, Caleb," I said quietly. "You knew something was wrong and chose to believe a convenient lie rather than reach out directly." He lowered his eyes. "You're right. And after seeing your email and thinking about all the examples you listed, I started remembering other instances. How parents would cancel on your events but never on mine. How Aunt Judith always introduced me as the successful Wallace and you as just Patricia's daughter. I benefited from the favoritism, so I never questioned it." His acknowledgement was validating but also painful, confirmation that the dynamic I'd sensed my entire life was real, not imagined. "Vanessa was horrified when she realized what happened," he continued. "She's the one who really pushed me to examine the family patterns. She said no one deserves to be excluded from their sibling's wedding, especially not someone who had been as involved in planning as you were." We talked for over 2 hours, moving beyond the wedding to the larger patterns of family dysfunction. Caleb revealed things I had known, like our father's explicit guidance to him about carrying on the Wallace name, while I was expected to marry well, ideas so outdated they would have been laughable, if not so damaging. "I'm not asking for instant forgiveness," Caleb said as our meeting concluded. "I'm just hoping we can start rebuilding on healthier terms." I left our coffee meeting cautiously optimistic but determined to maintain boundaries. "I need to see consistent change, not just hear promises," I told him. "Words are easy. Actions are what matter now." The responses from other family members to my original email had been mixed. My mother made surface-level apologies while maintaining her victim narrative. "I never meant to hurt you," she wrote. "I've always tried my best, but apparently that's never been good enough for you." My father's grudging acknowledgement came only after his conversation with Caleb. "Perhaps there have been some oversights," was as close as he came to accepting responsibility. Aunt Judith's response was predictably defensive, rewriting history to cast herself as my champion rather than critic. "I've always stood up for you in family discussions," she claimed, a statement so contrary to reality that it would have been comic in another context. Testing these tentative reconciliation waters, I agreed to a small family dinner at Caleb and Vanessa's apartment. I established clear ground rules beforehand, including that I would leave immediately if boundaries were crossed or gaslighting occurred. The evening was tense but productive. My mother made several attempts to revert to old patterns, like dismissively interrupting my work anecdote to ask Caleb about his career. When this happened, I simply stopped speaking and looked at her directly until the uncomfortable silence forced acknowledgement. "I'm sorry," she said stiffly. "Please continue with what you were saying, Meredith." A small victory, but significant in a family where my voice had so often been silenced. The most surprising alliance formed with Vanessa, who showed remarkable insight into the family dynamics despite her relatively recent inclusion. "I noticed at our engagement party how differently everyone treated you compared to Caleb," she confided while helping me clear dessert plates. "But I assumed it was because he was the groom-to-be. It took me too long to recognize the pattern." After careful assessment, I determined which relationships might be salvageable. Caleb seemed genuinely committed to change, as did Vanessa. My parents showed sporadic improvement, though my mother's ingrained patterns proved deeply resistant to modification. Aunt Judith remained perhaps the most entrenched in denial, unwilling to relinquish her role as family narrative controller. A pivotal moment came at a birthday celebration for my cousin's child. Aunt Judith, in typical fashion, began recounting a family story that minimized my role and contributions. This time, however, I didn't silently accept the revision. "That's not actually what happened, Aunt Judith," I said calmly. I was there, and it unfolded quite differently. The table fell silent, everyone frozen in the face of this unprecedented challenge to Judith's authority as family historian. "Well, this is how I remember it," she said dismissively. "Your memory is selective then," I replied, still calm but firm. "And it consistently erases or diminishes my presence in family narratives. I wonder why that is." The directness of my question left her sputtering, and used to having her manipulations named so explicitly. Several family members exchanged glances, perhaps recognizing the pattern for the first time. The aftermath of this confrontation was revealing. Some relatives approached me privately to express support, while others maintained uncomfortable distance, unwilling to disrupt the established hierarchy. My parents, witnessing this shift in dynamics, seemed unsure how to respond to my newfound assertiveness. The most encouraging change came from Caleb, who began establishing his own healthier boundaries with our parents and Aunt Judith. "I never realized how much pressure I internalized as the golden child," he admitted during one of our now regular coffee meetings. "Always having to be perfect to fulfill their expectations. It's exhausting, and ultimately it's not even about me. It's about their need for validation through my achievements." This insight marked real growth on his part, an understanding that the family system had damaged him too, albeit in different ways than it had damaged me. Gradually, I learned to accept imperfect progress rather than expecting complete transformation. My mother might never fully acknowledge her role in my exclusion, but she was making visible efforts to include me now. My father occasionally slipped into old dismissive habits, but could sometimes catch and correct himself. Aunt Judith remained largely unchanged, but I had developed tools to counter her manipulations without becoming emotionally derailed. The complexity of loving family members while protecting myself from their harmful patterns became my ongoing challenge. Dr. Reed helped me navigate this delicate balance, reminding me that reconciliation didn't require vulnerability to further harm. "You can maintain connection without sacrificing your boundaries," she assured me. "The key is consistency in enforcing those boundaries, even when it feels uncomfortable." Practicing this consistency gradually became easier, a muscle strengthened through repeated use. I no longer feared family rejection as I once had, understanding that their acceptance, while desired, was not essential to my well-being or self-worth. 6 months after the wedding incident that catalyzed my transformation, life had achieved a new equilibrium. The journey hadn't been linear or simple, but the progress was undeniable. My relationships with family members now existed on a spectrum of health and authenticity. Caleb and Vanessa had become genuine allies, our connection strengthened through honest communication rather than obligatory siblinghood. My parents demonstrated inconsistent but meaningful efforts toward change, sometimes falling into old patterns, but increasingly able to recognize and correct them. Aunt Judith remained largely unreformed, but her power to wound me had diminished significantly. Christmas dinner provided a perfect illustration of this new reality. Seated around my parents' dining table, I observed the subtle shifts in family dynamics with a sense of quiet satisfaction. When my mother began distributing gifts, she handed mine first rather than last, a small but meaningful reversal of the lifelong pattern of making me wait while others were served. Conversation flowed more equitably, with space made for my contributions rather than constant interruption or dismissal. When Aunt Judith attempted to minimize a recent professional achievement of mine, Caleb immediately intervened. Actually, Meredith's campaign increased client revenue by 30%, he corrected firmly. It's impressive by any standard in her industry. My father, noticing my surprise at this defense, added unexpectedly, she always had a good head for business. Takes after my side of the family. This awkward but genuine attempt at acknowledgement might have once seemed insufficient. Now I recognized it as significant progress from a man who rarely offered direct praise. The true test came later in the evening when Aunt Judith, perhaps threatened by the shifting dynamics, began a subtle campaign of manipulation. Making references to past family events where I had supposedly chosen not to participate, rather than been excluded, she attempted to re-establish the old narrative. Instead of engaging or defending myself, I simply stood, gathered my purse, and walked to the door. Meredith. My mother followed, confused. Where are you going? I made it clear that I won't participate in revisionist family history anymore, I explained calmly. I'll come back when Aunt Judith can interact without manipulation, or I'll see the rest of you another time. The stunned silence that followed was broken by my father's unexpected intervention. Judith, that's enough, he said firmly. Either respect the boundaries Meredith has set, or perhaps you should be the one to leave. This unprecedented defense left everyone, including me, momentarily speechless. It represented a seismic shift in family alignment, a recognition that my boundaries were legitimate rather than unreasonable. Outside the family sphere, my life had blossomed in multiple dimensions. Elliot and I had taken the significant step of moving in together. Our relationship deepened by navigating the family crisis together. His unwavering support through my darkest moments had revealed his character in ways that might have taken years in less challenging circumstances. Professionally, my newfound confidence had translated to remarkable success. The campaign that had impressed Diane led to a major promotion, placing me in charge of our company's most significant accounts. Colleagues who had previously overlooked me now sought my input and mentorship. My friendships with Zoe, Lauren, and Natasha had evolved into a chosen family that provided the unconditional support I'd always craved. Our weekly dinners became a sanctuary of authentic connection, filled with laughter, occasional tears, and genuine interest in each other's lives. Photography, initially a distraction from family stress, had developed into a serious creative outlet. My urban dawn photographs had been featured in a local gallery showing, an achievement that felt particularly meaningful because it was entirely separate from my professional identity or family connections. It was something that belonged solely to me. Natasha and I planned a celebration trip to mark the one-year anniversary of my boundary-setting email, a journey to the Pacific Northwest we talked about for years but never prioritized. To commemorate your liberation, she declared, booking the flights. On a quiet evening before this trip, I found myself reviewing old photos from Caleb's wedding. The images that had once triggered acute pain now evoked a complex but manageable mixture of emotions. Sadness for what should have been, acceptance of what was, appreciation for the growth that had resulted from this painful catalyst. New photos on my wall told a different story. Zoe's art opening, where I stood proudly beside my friend. A hiking trip with Elliot, both of us laughing at the summit. Thanksgiving with my chosen family, faces lit by candlelight and genuine affection. And yes, recent family gatherings where my presence was acknowledged and valued, not as an afterthought but as an integral part of the circle. The journey from exclusion to self-advocacy had been painful, but ultimately transformative. I no longer organized my life around seeking validation from those unwilling or unable to give it. I recognized toxic patterns before they could cause significant damage. Most importantly, I had begun breaking the cycle of generational trauma that had shaped my family for decades. Dr. Reed had once told me that the most powerful form of healing is to create a different future than your past would predict. Looking at the life I was building, the authentic connections I was nurturing, I recognized the truth in her words. The wedding exclusion that had once seemed like the ultimate rejection had actually been the painful beginning of genuine freedom. Have you ever experienced being excluded from important family events or consistently treated as less important than other family members? How did you handle it? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Remember that recognizing unhealthy family dynamics is the first step toward healing from them. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to my channel for more content about navigating difficult family relationships and building healthier boundaries. Don't forget to share this video with someone who might need to hear that they deserve to be valued and included. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, sometimes the most painful experiences lead to the most necessary growth.